everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Chrissy Pips. Listen, welcome to our back to school video series. I'm very happy about this series. Okay, in today's video, we are going to answer the question, what is a reading writing style learner? And I'm also going to give you some reading writing style learner tips. Okay, as always, I hope you guys are definitely ready to grab pen and paper, because you're my reading writing style learner people. Grab pen and paper and take some good notes. Okay, as always though, if you're here, you're interested, so let's get into it. So reading writing learners prefer to learn through written words or things being read out loud. To them, text is more powerful than any kind of visual or auditory representation of an idea. They are typically excellent writers but poor listeners. Reading writing learners usually perform very well on written exams. While there is some overlap with visual learners, reading writing learners are drawn to expression through writing, reading articles or books, or writing in diaries, looking up words in dictionaries, and they often enjoy expanding their knowledge by conducting research using online resources. Did you know that although reading writing learners are usually the good students in class, they can find participating in discussions challenging? Yep, these are the introverted learners, very self-sufficient and self-sustainable students. Since they can articulate themselves better when writing, they prefer to write their thoughts down before sharing them with the class. That way, they can process their thoughts and become more prepared and less stressed before sharing out loud. Reading writing learners feel most comfortable processing information using written materials. Duh, right? These materials can cover various sources like books, presentations, reports, handouts. In addition to reading, these learners tend to write corresponding notes to understand and retain information, and they do a good job at that too. There are different ways to get reading writing learners to engage and understand a certain lesson. For instance, it would be best to have them describe numeric facts or charts and diagrams with a written statement. They do well on written quizzes and written topics, writing out answers, essay questions, or just through written assignments, period. Okay? If you are a reading writing learner, guess what? This video has been transcribed into a PDF just for you. You can find it in the description box below. So if you want to take a minute now and pause it so that you can pull it up and follow along, that's perfectly okay. These videos are tailored towards your learning style, so I'm happy to help. But let's get into the strengths for reading writing learners. They include, but are not limited to, following written instructions, understanding and responding to written information, essays, novels, short stories, things like that. Writing essays and completing other English assignments, also becoming excellent writers, right? Taking notes and learning by rereading their notes to study for tests. Remember, we talked about that earlier. They enjoy reading out loud, but they prefer reading by themselves rather than having someone read to them to retain information. Learning by reading and taking detailed notes, they remember information that they read or write down easily. Effectively using dictionaries, thesauruses, textbooks, and other source material as references. Being good at grammar since they read habitually and quite frequently. Expressing themselves better when writing rather than when talking. Enjoying words that have interesting or unique meanings and backgrounds. Making organized PowerPoint presentations, enjoy using and putting things into categories, excel at multiple choice and essay style tests, reading in their free time, and actually enjoying it. Now, before we get into reading writing strategies, let me know in the comments below if you or your child is a reading writing learner based on these strengths. I'm excited to find out the categories that my followers are in, that all of my viewers are in. So please let me know in the comments below. Now, if some or all of these strengths don't sound quite right, You might have one of the other learning preferences, so feel free to stop the video and head back over to the Back to School playlist to find the video that's right for you. Finding your learning style and your kids' learning style is a critical step in making your learning journey easier, more accessible, and more effective, both for you and your child on your learning journeys. So let's get into the tips. Take notes during class. Fortunately for reading writing learners, the traditional school curriculum caters nicely to their learning style. Most teachers and professors require, or at least recommend, that students take notes in their notebooks and review them to study, which is exactly how reading writing learners prefer to study. You don't need to write down everything word for word. In fact, it's better to take the information and write it in your own words. So doing things like converting handouts into your own words is very beneficial too. Using symbols and abbreviations is our next tip. Learn how to write shorthand. In order to avoid writing everything down word for word when you take your notes, it is recommended that you use abbreviations and symbols. You can abbreviate by leaving out like most articles. Articles are things like a, and the. And most conjunctions. Conjunctions are words like and, nor, but, or, yet, so, or the fanboys. You can shorten words by leaving out vowels or other letters, and use abbreviations or symbols like the tilde for approximate or about, the hashtag or the pound sign for numbers, the and symbol for the word and, an exclamation point for important things, and like maybe a dollar sign for money. For commonly used words and phrases, this is going to be helpful for you. You may even come up with a few of your own and personalize them. That's also good. Through abbreviation and symbol use, shortening words and sentences allow you to write down as much as possible as quickly as possible. So learning how to write shorthand is going to be beneficial to you. Rewrite and reread your notes. Aside from taking notes, these types of learners get a lot out of rereading and rewriting what they wrote down. It helps you to ingrain what you learned when you attach physical motion, especially if it's the notes that were originally like typed out. So rewriting them down is going to be beneficial. Since your like reading comprehension is usually above average, it is also useful to reread notes, textbooks, and articles and slides just a few times over, and you're good to go. Read additional information on the topic is going to be our next tip. For read-write learners who lean more towards the reading side, dedicate some time to finding additional information on what you're learning about is going to be beneficial. This way, you can not only read the assigned chapters and articles, but you can expand your knowledge and better understand concepts by getting more in-depth information. The next tip is going to be follow along during readings. When presented with information verbally, take advantage of any text-based visual aids that may be available to enable you to follow along. If you have a textbook where you can follow along, mouthing the words along with the teacher is also very helpful. The next tip is going to be convert numbers into words. Translate charts, diagrams, and graphs into words, or compose short explanations for them to make sure that you have a good understanding. Our last tip is going to be appeal to the auditory learning style. Saying things out loud as you read and write can help you with memory retention. Any conscious act, speaking included, creates new pathways in your mind and tells your brain that what you're doing is worth remembering. The more ways you can engage your brain, the better. Now, next we're going to get into our parent tips. Parents, this is a learning style that may be a little harder to identify because of how the school system in the United States is set up. Of the 4 learning styles, reading writing is probably the easiest to cater to, since much of the traditional education system tends to cater to like writing essays, doing research, and reading books. So for this learning style, it's like finding a chameleon who's blending in very well. You should see some traits by the time they're in like 5th or 6th grade though. It's important that you and your kid take the learning style quizzes. You can help your child use information from their secondary learning style also. Parents, if you're working with reading, writing learners, here are some tips you can use to help them in school and communicate more efficiently and effectively with them. The first tip is going to be they need time. Be mindful about allowing plenty of time for these students to absorb information through the written word. This is the group that can write down their spelling words 10 times each before the test and do well. Repetition is needed for them, so please encourage it. The next tip is going to be allow them to post note cards in visible places. If they're learning a new language, help them out by letting them post notes on household items in that other language name. That way they can kind of pick up on that quickly. If you don't let them post it on the item, just let them post it near it. The next tip is going to be give them opportunities to get their ideas out on paper. They are not big verbal explainers. They prefer to write things down, so please keep that in mind. Okay? The next tip for you is going to be they are not good at graphs and charts, so be willing to help them or find help for them as it relates to turning these things into paragraphs, or like breaking it down on paper for them. They will need to add words to the visual elements in order to understand them, so make sure there are a lot of details. The next tip is going to be provide them with their own space. Reading, writing learners like to organize things in a certain way. Therefore, you should give them their own space when possible. Okay, allow reading, writing learners to decorate and organize their workspace in a unique way that suits them. For example, reading, writing learners may prefer to like stack important documents on their desk rather than to store it in a file cabinet. The next tip is going to be help them create their own color coding note system. Use pens or pencils or highlighters, underline important vocabulary terms or concepts while they're reading is going to be helpful. Highlight and color code passages that connect to one another. Don't draw in the books though. Use one specific color to write out what images are so that you can tell them apart from text when you're going through this process. Add sticky notes that show main ideas and your own inferences. There's a video in this tip or for this tip too. I will be dropping that in the description. I created it for visual, kinesthetic, and reading, writing learners with you guys in mind so that you can follow along easily. The last tip is going to be if you have house rules, please write them down. They like seeing words, okay? Now, I wanted to provide as much info as possible since there is not a lot out there about this learning style. So I hope this video is helpful for you. Please make sure to watch the videos for both your primary and secondary learning style as well as your child's, and then dive into the different study techniques. If you found this video first, it's very important that you and your child take the learning quizzes. So head over to the playlist, the first video in the description box for this series. You're going to see all of the information that you need. I am a kinesthetic auditory learner who doesn't mind visual aids, so you can be in multiple categories, and that's awesome too. Now, don't forget, I dropped a few links and some helpful tools in the description box for you. That way you have some references, some things to go on, and then here's the playlist over here for you. And if you found some value in this info, please consider sharing it with a friend or family that you think could get some value from this information as well. Now, if you have any suggestions for me, feel free to drop those in the comments and let me know. But I hope you're having an absolutely amazing morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.